Yathākāśo hṛṣīkeśo nānopādhigato vibhuḥ Tadbhedādbhinnavadbhāti tannāśe kevalo bhavet. The all-pervading Akasa appears to be diverse on account of its association with various conditionings, Upadhis, which are different from each other. Space becomes one on the destruction of these limiting adjuncts. So also the omnipresent truth appears to be diverse on account of its association with the various Upadhis and becomes one on the destruction of these Upadhis. Till the previous verses, we have learned through various examples about the illusory nature of the world. Now, Shankara is explaining how the non-dual Brahman, who is ever free from any association, appears as various names and forms to an ignorant person. We can say even the gold and the ornament verse falls under this category only. The simple simile given at the outset in this shloka is just as space. Before we get into this real situation and relate our actual life with the simile of the space given, let us get into the deeper meaning behind hṛṣīkeśo. This is derived from the two words hṛṣīkeśo. This was given as interpretation even for one later Samarpan bhajan. He doesn't recollect the exact bhajan. Hṛṣīka means the senses. Isha means the controller. The combined meaning reads as one who controls the senses. That is the omnipresent Lord. The word has an interesting secondary meaning also. The root hr means to loot or to take away. What do the senses take away or loot? Through the senses, the sense objects are looted from the world and brought to their indwelling Lord, the presence within. Why would the indwelling Lord want this loot brought by the sense objects, by the senses, pertaining to the sense objects? He who is the all-pervading Lord, what need is there for him to enjoy this loot which the senses have brought from the sense objects? A little insight makes us see that there is an impostor in place of the Lord, in between the Lord and the indweller Hridaya Nivasi Atman and the loot of the sense objects brought by the senses. There is some intermediary or an impostor, which is our ego. Because of these interventions, the actions of the senses take on the appearance of looting the world. The senses appear to be robbers, bringing the sense objects to their master, which is the ego. The ego enslaves the senses and makes them perform such a demeaning service. Instead of serving the Lord, the senses are made to serve the ego and gratify its ever increasing desires. This is the tragedy of the sense enslavement. Although this secondary meaning appears to be not relating to the context of the verse, it highlights, however, the tragic consequences of the illusory appearance of the numerous Upadhis. Identifying with the Upadhis is what stirs up desire after desire and leads to more and more looting of the sense objects. To this extent, this somehow gets connected to this verse, current verse. When these Upadhis are destroyed, says the verse, then only will the diversity end and the unity behind will be experienced and existed upon. The simile of the space. Space here is directly compared to the all-pervading omnipresent self. Space has no limits. It cannot be divided. Yet, man delights in breaking it up into different units by his walls and fences, by seeing differences in the sense objects, which then become possessions of individuals. How this happens, we just saw. In between the Hridaya Nivasi Atman and the sense objects, Dridrishya Viveka, what we saw, Rupam, okay, Rupam, Drishyam, Lochanam, Drik, we saw, okay. The outside world or the Rupam, Drik, okay, the scene, and the seer is what? The Lochanam, eyes. So, the eyes can be taken as cover, including all our sense perceptions, okay, eyes, hands, everything, ears, ityadi. So, outside objects are seen, the senses or the eye plus ear plus nose plus everything, hands, the senses are receiving the sense objects from the world. And what is happening here as a deviation from the Dridrishya Viveka understanding, here what is happening, they are all channelized or diverted to our ego, which stands between the sense objects, the senses, and the Lord, Paramatma, or the Atman. So the walls, what the ego does, we just read now, we just heard now. They create fences. They create walls and fences, the ego, and differentiate between the sense objects perceived through senses, and develops desires for those sense objects which are as per its sanskaras, vasanas, and develops a desire, and the desire craves for possessing them. Actions are done accordingly, and dushkarma is added. Let us draw comparison between the space and the self. Both are pure. Space is pure. In spite of the different upadhis superimposed upon by it by the ignorance of man, space remains united as one all-pervading entity. Similarly, the self is pure, unaffected by all the numerous items the jiva gets associated with the world. Both are infinite but appear as limited. Just like how the space is everywhere but appears to be confined in objects such as pots, buildings, rooms, etc., the infinite self appears to be limited only due to the limited adjuncts of the conditionings or the conditionings. Both are formless but appear to have limited form. Though space is indivisible and one, yet in association with the objects such as a jar or a tumbler, etc., it appears to have taken different forms like. So we say pot space, jar space, tumbler space gets conditioned. Similarly, on account of its association with various upadhis, the self appears to be limited as different names and forms. It is only due to ignorance that one assigns various attributes on the unlimited self. More subtly, it has to be understood in this way: whereas the self is the only reality in the entire creation, we give various names and forms to the self, and the self is forgotten, and we say that we think and perceive various human beings with their names and forms: Ram, Krishna, Damodar, etc., etc. The sadhaka is asking, when I see so many people, bodies, beings, diversity, O Master, how do you say that only one exists? The teacher says, when four blindfolded individuals are asked to touch different parts of an elephant, each one describes based on their perception. One who touched the belly from the underneath said it is a ceiling. Another, touching the leg, said it is a soft pillar. Third one touched the trunk and said it is a huge bulky rope. Another one who touched the elephant's ears said it is a big tray. Just like all these parts and perceptions are put together and explained to each of them, that whatever each one saw is but one elephant. Here, understood that whatever names and forms you are perceiving as different from each one another, like the various parts of an elephant understood as something, 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 as per the perception of each one of the four, but like only one elephant, all the perceptions were wrong, but there is one elephant. Similarly, the truth is that one Brahman alone exists. Another example is the sun reflects in all types of water: lake, pond, pots, mirror, concave, convex, showing different shape, size, height, weight, even though the source is one bright sun. The diversity appears in multiplicity from one Brahman. It appears as though there is multiplicity, whereas there is no multiplicity at all. The verse also suggests the seeker should go deeper inside the five koshas, five layers, and understand that I am not the body, not the breath, not the mind, not the intellect. I am an all-pervading space. Satchitpur, given way back in 16 or 17. So, let us recapitulate. Before the superimposition of macro and micro, I am non-dualistic Paramatman, indivisible whole. Because of dualistic universe consisting of macro and micro, I myself reappear as finite jiva. This seeming fall or falling down from the reality of me the Atman to me the Jiva is because of the ignorance of my reality, real existence as Atman. Let us go step by step and summarize. Space is non-dual, indivisible, all-pervading. When enclosure container walls are built, space seemingly becomes half space, pot space, hall space, big space, small space, etc. Next, all these are names of one indivisible space in which all the enclosures come and go. Next, there is no inside space or outside space or big space, nothing. Similarly, one consciousness alone exists. Next, it seems to get seemingly divided when bodies are created and it envelops, encloses the consciousness. Next, enclosed consciousness is called Jivatman and unenclosed consciousness is Paramatman. When the mind is active, I, the Jivatman, in my waking state of consciousness, exist as just the Jiva, inviting the sense objects to be, welcoming the sense objects to be taken in through my senses and feeding my ego. In Avadhuta Gita, few verses describing the state of a realized Avadhuta who verily exists as Brahman, end with the last line, which is repeated in all those verses. And this line is Jnanamrutam samarasam gaganopamoham. I am the essence of all the knowledge. I am omnipresent like space. Self-realization is breaking the limitation of pot or jar or walls or tumbler or whatever it is, that is breaking all our bondage as limited jiva and realizing the oneness of the self. Atman, individual consciousness, with the universal pure consciousness. The individual consciousness, spot space. Pure consciousness, Brahman, universal space. Yesterday, while returning from a Sai Center bhajan, he poured to a sadhaka. Till the time, he said, till the time you are, if at all you are able to be in intense nididhyasana and you are able to even get the glimpse of that transcendental state, which is after transcending the creation, you exist verily as Paramatman, that is one who existed prior to creation. While whispering these lines, he did not even know what Atma Bodha verse is coming up today, this week. But now he is relating to this, to today's post. It is the existence as space. And then he said, once you get up from the dhyana and face the world, is there any way to exist beyond this creation? That means not get entrapped into the sense objects, Upadhis, conditionings of this creation, even while dealing with various objects in creation. Same, a sadhaka put up a question just a while before. How do you call that everything is one when there are so many names and forms? Same thing is put the other way. All these things yesterday he whispered without referring to this because he didn't know about this Atma Bodha verse. And for those one or two or few who can believe, only for them, while seated in the Sai center, the existence beyond the creation was also experienced. And this question also surfaced, that while being in the creation, that is after returning from the Sai center and in the office, at home, in the crowd, at various places, performing various duties, dharmas, how still to exist not affected by the creation? This question also came up during the bhajan session, and Swami, as Antaryami, as the indweller, without speaking in voice, without form, as he ever does, he answered only one voiceless voice answer came from Bhagavan. He said, exist as me. That's all. Exist as me. And yesterday, while pouring to that sadhaka, he just left at that, because in that state, he was not able to expound more on this. Swami's whisper in voiceless voice as the answer, exist as me. Now he is explaining. Swami, till the time he was in the present form as Satya Sai, acted intensely as the Chancellor of the Satya Sai University, as a strict administrator of the ashram, as the Lord who had to come out to give darshan to his devotees, to give interviews to group of devotees, to give discourses, to supervise the celebrations, and so on and so forth. Still, he would, of course, he would never for a split of a second have bound himself with the objects of this creation. So he said, exist as me. All these things happened, Kala, Tetaya, beyond the time space. All these things happened with that 1 hour of bhajan session. So existing as him in the context of today's verse is to act in the samsara, may be bound apparently within the pot being the creation at the macro level and our own body at the micro level, but still never for a moment get carried away by the limitations of pot, both at macro level of the samsara and the micro level of my body, my physical desires, etc. If we are able to exist thus, then though physically our eyes may see, our ears may hear everything in this creation, still we would be internally beyond the creation, or to say we would be existing as if we existed in that intense nididhyasana, having transcended the creation. Swami's answer, it happened yesterday. Maybe as though as a prelude to today's verse, Swami said, exist as me. Jnanamritam samarasam gaganopamoham. I am the essence of all knowledge. I am omnipresent like space. Hari Om Tat Sat.